I want to turn to the tax debate, and perhaps we'll set this up by just looking at how it's played out this week, particularly on the Labor side.
In full, no, I won't be, Deb. I won't be. Actually, I haven't been approached by Matisse Cormann. There has been no negotiations that have gone on.
Is it right that Pauline Hanson says you haven't made any attempt to contact her?
Well, again, this is a matter for the Labor Party. This is entirely, this income tax plan is a matter for the Labor Party.
It's unreasonable, I think, for the government to be almost pushing the parliament into just, this is it, it's this way or no way.
Well, they have a mandate for this term, and we'll vote for the tax cuts that come in this term. They haven't been elected in perpetuity.
I mean, I can't understand why Anthony Albanese would want to be tied down to a losing pre-election argument.
Those people who voted Labor called upon us to vote for something different as well.
The party hasn't come to any particular conclusion, but what I am happy to say is that the government is listening to us on energy.
There will be no special deals and there will be no horse trading.
Right now we are paying more for gas than our Asian friends.
The front bench is reportedly pressuring Anthony Albanese to back the government's entire tax plan if the bills aren't split. That after a public urging from Peter Khalil.
We're considering it, but one of the things that we're waiting for, as well as for the government to give us the information that we've requested.
Troy, Peter Khalil is the only Labor MP to publicly say they should wave through the full tax package if the government won't split it up. Others privately are agitating the same line. But Anthony Albanese is genuinely open-minded about this at this stage. He wants to take his time, have proper consultation, consideration, less haste with these things, all of that. Not going to dance to the media's tune or the government's tune. What do you think? Where is the most likely landing point for Labor at this stage, though?
Look, I'm not sure that we have enough information to be definitive about that yet, David. I mean, I've spoken to Labor MPs as well who are quite clear that they should be supporting this, but they're not prepared to say it publicly because they're not sure where the leadership is going on this. You're right that Anthony Albanese is open about this question. He's consulting with people. He said here on Sky News on Friday that someone earning up to $200,000 a year is not particularly wealthy or well off. That may be the case for people who live in his electorate, but it's certainly not the case for people who live elsewhere around the country.
Saying that, putting that figure on something, you know, 200 grand, you're not particularly well off.
Well, I think he's mistaken because the average income is around 50 to 60,000, and someone earning about 200,000 is in the top 5% of income earners. But it probably reflects a lot of voters who live in his inner city electorate in Sydney. So that might be his worldview, but I think there was a mistake, and I think that having talked to some Labor MPs, they were quite shocked to hear him say that because it's quite factually incorrect. Notwithstanding the pressures of living in Sydney and high house prices and rent prices and things like that. But a lot of the party is not ready to give up this agenda. A lot of the party went to the election opposing these tax cuts, wanting more information, arguing that, you know, the third stage doesn't come in until about 2024, 2025, and they're not prepared to give up that fight. But I think this is a big test for Labor. I think Labor needs to recognise that they lost the election. The government has a mandate. They've got a majority of seats in the parliament. And Labor should not make themselves the issue here. This is the challenge for Labor. Don't make themselves the issue. Let the government get their package through and move on to other issues that they can prosecute more effectively. This is a slippery slope for Labor, and I think they're playing with fire in this by suggesting that they possibly could reject these tax cuts.
Malcolm, it's a big call, whichever way they go, right? Albanese is going to have to live with this decision for months, if not years, through this term.
Absolutely. And I think it was Paul Kelly said it was a test of how Labor was going to manage its affairs in defeat. But look, on the subject of a mandate is whatever you can get through Parliament. Truly, blessing policies that haven't been passed through Parliament as having some sort of right to eternal life is just silly. But
you don't think, I mean, the government didn't take a lot in terms of a policy agenda to the election, but they did take this one.
Oh, well, they also said that lower and middle income taxpayers will get their rebate, during the financial year about to come to a sudden shudder of a conclusion. And they're not going to. It has to be legislated. So that's a broken promise. I don't know if there's a mandate for broken promises. But look, I do think the Labor Party will, in the end, give this package a tick. But there are a couple of questions that do deserve debate. We're talking about tax cuts that might happen, after two governments?
Well, yeah, 5 years from now, 2024.
Yeah. And secondly, we're talking about an economy which is not as healthy and robust as we were told, which could be subjected to all sorts of pressures, both domestic and global. We don't know whether we can afford these tax cuts and a budget surplus or two. So, look, Labor will probably push for answers, detailed answers on these matters, make them public, but I think, as you guys have been saying, in the end, it'll give it a tick.
And just in terms of the way Anthony Albanese is dealing with this, taking his time. Parliament's another week away, but still no decision on this. I'm told he's okay with MPs like Peter Khalil having their say publicly on this. Is it a different approach to the Bill Shorten style of leadership, do you think, Mel?
Well, it was necessary because the early policy formation of Bill Shorten's regime just ended in a heap on May 18. They had to start again. There's no doubt about it. And there are other areas in which Labor has to come forward with something a bit more substantial than it has at the moment. For instance, energy policy, climate change policy. Believe it or not, they don't have anything on that at the moment. That's still a work in progress. I mean, but. Yeah, look, I think it's the only option. And talk about Labor divisions is, I think, a bit tough. Well, we don't want members of parties to discuss, policy options.
Go and tell George Christensen
that's
others
right.
in the government that it doesn't do them any harm.
No, look, it looks like a free debate. If there are contrary voices after a policy decision has been made, such as happened to the last government over the neg, then that's a division.
Yeah, but and Joel Fitzgibbon made this point during the week. They shouldn't all be robots. Troy, your thoughts on that? I mean, I think it's a pretty healthy thing, isn't it, when you're forming a position, to have a little bit of debate.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Labor doesn't have a position yet, so it should welcome free and open debate. The Labor Party has a strange tradition of great debate internally, party conferences, caucus meetings, but for some reason in recent years they've shunned the idea that MPs, even on the backbench, can express a contrary view. But we are in this phase at the moment where Labor is still wrestling with what it should do. So, I mean, let 1,000 flowers bloom, and I think it's encouraging and a good sign for a party to have robust discussion and debate about ideas in the public domain. But once they make a decision, following the solidarity principle that Labor's adopted for more than a century, everybody should get behind that.